God, open our eyes to see, our ears to hear, and our hearts to love. Amen. God is love. Love is God. We say it lightly, but too often the love of the divine power is removed from our understandings of earthly love. What does it mean to engage with holy energy in a way that we are deeply affected because of the depth of our passion? And more than this, if we can really have a relationship with the sacred, shouldn't the divine also be affected by us, shaped and moved by our love? One genre of Christian music that I really don't like is what I call evangelical love songs to Jesus. But the problem with these songs is not love. Sublimation and disembodiment are the problems. In these songs, the beloved is distant from and unmoved by the lover. We have long been told that God is immutable, unchanging, constant. And it is true that the qualities of divine justice and compassion are reliable. But this does not mean that God is unchanging. Would you love a person who refused to be affected by your love for him or her? Loving our friends and lovers teaches us that we grow and empower one another in the process of our relationship. I am not the same person that I would have been had I not been loved by my parents. The same is true for relationships with friends and lovers. Some of that may have been more for the worse than for the better, but nevertheless, there is always change in both the lover and the beloved. And in a 20-year relationship of love and intimacy, such as I have with my beloved Claire, I am still changing for the better because of her wisdom and kindness. Process theology sees the universe as creative, interrelational and dynamic, open to the future. God is relational, present in every moment in our lives and in all entities and in all levels of being. The world is interconnected, in effect a giant ecosystem where what harms or blesses one, harms or blesses all. The readings that we heard from Isaiah and from Luke and also from Carter Haywood are full of relational passion. We can almost see the smoke rising from the biblical texts, so passionate is their love, anger, and disappointment. The Isaiah and Luke texts resonate with domestic discord. The Isaiah text is the famous parable of the vineyard. It begins beguilingly as a love song, but a bit like a classic country and western song, it quickly turns to cheating hearts, disappointments, infidelity, threats, and despair. The contrast is striking between the tenderness of the love that produces the vineyard, a symbol of care and love and planning for a future together, and the anger that promises to destroy what was so lovingly made. There was a time when things were good between the lovers. Promises were made. A future was planned. But now, says Isaiah, it's all different. The beloved did not respond as intended, as desired. The parable leads to its heavy conclusion. In this pleasant planting, Yahweh looked for justice, but behold, bloodshed. For righteousness, but behold, a cry. Righteousness is another word for right relationship. That's all God yearns for a just relationship with the beloved. And justice is an indicator of the health of that relationship. At the heart of a loving relationship gone wrong is the feeling that some injustice has been perpetrated. God looks for justice, but instead finds brokenness. God looks for right relationship, but finds only hopelessness. Reading through these texts, these smoking texts, I thought about which texts in our culture speak to the risk and the passion of relationship that might help us understand the dynamic nature of our dance with the Spirit. And the passion of country music reminded me of a song titled "I Don't Believe I Care" from the New Zealand band the Dunstan Rangers. The singers are Chris Nicol, who is a friend of Claire and mine, and Charlotte Yates, who is a well-known New Zealand singer. It's a raw song of tentative abandonment to love and passion, despite past hurt and future risk. For both the singers, the male and the female, the beloved is a woman. It's a song about human love. But as you listen to it in a minute, I'm going to invite you to let it illuminate your engagement with the divine. In our relationship with the holy, there is risk, there is passion, there is letting go. The text from Luke, on the other hand, displays a rare moment when Jesus' anger is given voice. "I came to cast fire upon the earth. Do you think that I have come to bring peace on earth? No." What's happened to the Prince of Peace? Where is the voice of healing and hope? There is a clue in the second half of the text where Jesus calls his listeners to read the times. Wake up and pay attention. The tone of the text seems to be Jesus almost shouting at someone who is not paying attention to what he has been saying. Like I feel like when I'm talking to Andrew, who hopefully isn't listening, when he's on the internet with headphones on his head. A scolding comes, a warning. Jesus' frustration is that his listeners aren't attentive to his teachings or his warnings about the state of the world. Jesus' heart is troubled. Jesus is affected deeply by his disciples' lack of commitment. He's not some God-human acting out robotically the grand plan of a distant God. He hurts. He feels love and anger, like us. Everything is related to everything else. We live in an interconnected world where the welfare of one affects the welfare of all. This week, thanks to the outstanding journalists at The Guardian, many of us have read the harrowing reports of abuse and trauma from Nauru. Through this text, I can still hear Jesus calling us in anger and passion to recognize the interconnectedness of all human life, of our lives in relationship with the people seeking freedom from persecution, and the life of God, calling us to pay attention to that which is not well with the world, to Aboriginal youths in detention in Darwin, and autistic children locked in a cage in a school in Canberra. Jesus is calling us to right relationship, to love and justice with one another, with the earth, with the divine. It makes sense then that the metaphor of a loving relationship is at the very heart of the divine character. In many places in the Bible, God's love for the world is expressed through divine feeling. God feels for the world. God aches for the world, struggles with it, moves it to bring it to health and well-being. What loving partner doesn't do the same for their relationship? Why wouldn't it be the same for God, only more so? If God is love, that means that God is connected to the world through God's feelings. What the creatures do affects God. What the beloved does affects the lover. Love means becoming open and vulnerable to the beloved, opening to their love, but also to their hurtful acts. We are exposed to the complexities of life through love more than any other way. It is the same for God. By creating the world, establishing a relationship with it, covenanting with its creatures, planning and hoping for a loving future, the divine takes the risks of being hurt. That is the way love works. Why would we think that the holy is somehow immune from one of the dangers of what makes love, love? That is the risks involved in loving one another. These texts are hot. They address matters of the heart, the desires of love and its many disappointments. They are about love that is real, earthy, passionate, risk-taking. Love songs are our culture's representation of the complexity of love. Love is in the air, quite literally, on the airwaves and the ether, on radio and TV and music and songs. We understand love quite intimately. Love of friends and family, love of lovers. It's a story, it's a dilemma. Might it not be the same with God? How else could it be? If God is love, then love must work similarly for God as it does for us. Otherwise, it would be something else, and we shouldn't call it divine love. What we do affects God, the divine, sacred power in relation. Our acts can cause God pain or joy. Our lack of action can cause divine and human suffering also. I want to finish with another song, this time one that is less ambivalent and more committed, and ask you again to listen past the human love song to the insights that the song has for living a spirit-tuned life. This time the selection is more rock than country, and the singer is Melissa Etheridge, and the song is I Take You With Me. In this week, will you take the divine with you, passionately living out the promise you have made to walk in Jesus' way? To engage in relationship with the sacred, to live the love and justice of God, we have to be that committed, that passionate, that risk-taking, to take our lover with us always, affecting and affected, loving and beloved. So may it be.